They were taken in the dead of night, wrapped in foreign cloth, carried across oceans, and locked behind glass walls where no prayers could reach them. Thousands of sacred objects, removed from Native American communities, displayed as artifacts in museums across the world. But these weren't just objects, they were living spirits, ancestors, the very soul of entire nations. The bundle sits in a climate-controlled vault in New York. Temperature, exactly 68 degrees. Humidity, 45%. Perfect conditions for preservation. But nobody asks what it preserves. Inside that bundle, wrapped in elk hide over 2 centuries ago, are the prayers of a grandmother who believed her great-grandchildren would carry them forward. She never imagined they would be prisoner number 1,847B in a museum basement, catalogued, photographed, and forgotten. This isn't ancient history. This is happening right now. Across America and Europe, over 870,000 Native American sacred objects remain in museum collections. Some have been there for 150 years. Others arrived last century, bought from those who excavated burial sites for profit. The museums call it cultural preservation. The communities call it something else entirely. In 1879, a Lakota medicine bundle disappeared from the Black Hills. It contained items used in healing ceremonies for 7 generations. The keeper of the bundle, an elder named Brings Thunder, had refused to sell it to collectors who came offering money. They came back at night. When he woke, it was gone. He spent the rest of his life searching. He died in 1891, still searching. That bundle surfaced in a Berlin museum in 1923, catalogued as Primitive Religious Objects, North American Origin. No mention of Brings Thunder, no mention of the circumstances. Just a price paid to a private collector and a permanent acquisition number. Brings Thunder's great-great-grandson found it in 2003. He was a graduate student researching Native American collections in European museums. He saw the photograph in a database and recognized it immediately. The specific beadwork pattern, the way the hide was tied, the eagle feather placement, all exactly as described in his family's oral history. He requested its return. The museum refused. Their reason? It has been part of our collection for 80 years and serves educational purposes. But what education? Who learns from an object torn from its context, its prayers silenced, its purpose erased? Imagine you inherit your grandmother's wedding ring. It's been in your family for generations. Every woman has worn it, added their story to it. Then someone breaks into your home, takes it, and you find it years later in a locked display case across the world. When you ask for it back, they tell you, it's ours now. We're preserving it. You should be grateful. This is what repatriation feels like for Native communities. The sacred pipe of the Northern Cheyenne, the Zuni war gods, the Tlingit clan regalia, the Pawnee Morning Star bundle. Each one has a story. Each one has people waiting for its return. And each one faces the same institutional walls of bureaucracy, denial, and delay. Sometimes museums claim they don't know which tribe an object belongs to. This is convenient ignorance. The objects themselves often carry clear tribal markers, specific beadwork styles, materials found only in certain regions, designs unique to particular clans. A Hopi kachina doesn't look like Navajo ceremonial items. A Haida totem carries different symbolism than Lakota prayer bundles. But we don't know becomes the perfect excuse for inaction. In 1990, the United States passed the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA, finally, legal grounds for communities to reclaim what was taken. Museums were required to inventory their Native American collections and consult with tribes about sacred objects and human remains. 33 years later, thousands of objects remain unreturned. The law has loopholes large enough to hide entire collections. Museums can claim objects are culturally unidentifiable. They can say consultation with tribes is ongoing for decades. They can demand extensive documentation from communities whose records were destroyed by the very same colonial forces that took their sacred objects. Prove this belonged to your ancestors. Prove it was used ceremonially. Prove your connection. Prove, prove, prove. Meanwhile, the objects remain behind glass. The Lakota elder walks through the Natural History Museum in Washington. She's part of a repatriation delegation, here to discuss the return of ceremonial items taken from her reservation in the 1,890 seconds. A museum curator leads them through storage areas, pulling out boxes, showing artifacts. She stops at one display. Her hands begin to shake. "That," she whispers, "shouldn't be here. It's a woman's burial dress, over 120 years old, removed from a burial site. The dress was meant to help a soul journey to the spirit world. Instead, it's been examined, studied, displayed. The woman who wore it never completed her journey." The curator explains they need more documentation before return can be considered. The elder closes her eyes. She knows what documentation means. Years of committee meetings, expert testimonies, bureaucratic delays. She's 74 years old. She might not live to see this dress return to the earth where it belongs. How many elders have died waiting? But here's what museums don't advertise in their diversity statements and land acknowledgments. Some sacred objects are deteriorating because museums don't understand how to care for them. A medicine bundle needs to be opened at specific times of year. Prayers need to be said. Tobacco needs to be offered. These aren't superstitions. They're maintenance practices developed over centuries. Without them, materials degrade differently. The objects lose their power, not just spiritually, but physically. A Pueblo community finally reclaimed their ceremonial items after 40 years in museum storage. When they opened the bundles, they found items damaged beyond repair. The museum had stored them next to objects from other tribes, something that would never happen in proper ceremonial context. Cross-contamination had occurred. Sacred and profane mixed together. Some damage cannot be undone. The British Museum holds over 3,000 Native American objects. The Smithsonian, over 950,000 items. Berlin's Ethnological Museum, tens of thousands. Paris, Vienna, Stockholm, every major museum in the Western world has Native American collections. Most were acquired through excavation of burial sites, removal during conflicts, or purchases during times of extreme poverty and displacement. Legally purchased, the museums claim. But what's legal about buying ceremonial items from people who were forced onto reservations and stripped of their livelihoods? In 1881, the U.S. government banned Native American religious practices. The sun dance was outlawed. Potlatches were prohibited. Possession of sacred objects could result in imprisonment. During this time, museums and collectors moved in, acquiring items from people who faced jail time for keeping their own religious objects. Legally purchased. There are victories, small ones, hard won. In 2023, a museum in Scotland returned a ghost dance shirt to the Lakota people. It had been taken after the Wounded Knee incident in 1890, removed from the battlefield. It took 133 years to come home. The ceremony when it returned was private. No cameras, no media, just the descendants of those who died at Wounded Knee, finally able to hold their ancestors' shirt, to pray with it, to release those spirits who had been held in a foreign land for over a century. One elder said, "Now they can rest." But for every object returned, hundreds remain in collections. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Field Museum, the Peabody, university collections, private collectors, auction houses where sacred items still sell to the highest bidder. In 2019, a Hopi sacred mask sold at a Paris auction for €160,000. Despite protests from the Hopi nation, despite pleas from the U.S. government, the sale proceeded. French law protects private property rights over cultural heritage. The mask disappeared into a private collection. Who owns it now? Where is it? Will it ever return? Some museums are changing. Slowly. The Denver Art Museum appointed a Native American curator who transformed their approach to repatriation. The Field Museum in Chicago has returned hundreds of items. These institutions recognize that true preservation means returning objects to the communities who can care for them properly. But many museums resist. Their arguments reveal deep assumptions. Native communities can't be trusted to preserve their own heritage. Museums are neutral guardians. Objects belong to all humanity. But whose humanity? Who benefits from these displays? Who profits from exhibitions featuring Indian artifacts, while actual Native people struggle with poverty, healthcare crises, and the ongoing impact of systematic cultural suppression? The irony cuts deep. Museums claim to preserve Native American culture, while the very act of holding these objects prevents that culture from being lived, practiced, transmitted to new generations. A young Zuni man stands before a museum case in New York. Behind the glass, a war god figure that should be outside, returning to the earth as part of its sacred cycle. These figures aren't meant to be preserved forever. They're meant to decay, to return to the land, to complete their spiritual purpose. By preserving it, the museum has trapped it in a kind of spiritual limbo. He tries to explain this to the museum director. She nods sympathetically but says her hands are tied. Board of trustees, acquisition policies, legal complications. He walks away knowing that War God will remain behind glass long after he's gone. His children might fight this same battle. And their children, how many generations must wait? The fight continues in committee rooms and courtrooms, through NAGPRA claims and diplomatic channels. Native American repatriation specialists work tirelessly, traveling to museums, documenting collections, building cases for return. It's exhausting work, emotionally demanding work, to see your ancestors' belongings cataloged like specimens, to advocate for the return of sacred items to people who see them as curiosities, to face rejection after rejection. But they persist, because every object returned is a victory. Every bundle that comes home, every ceremonial item that can finally fulfill its purpose. The bundles, the pipes, the masks, the regalia, they're waiting, in climate-controlled vaults, in museum basements, behind glass, waiting for the day they can breathe free air again, waiting for prayers, waiting to go home. And the communities wait too, patient, determined, knowing that what was taken will one day return. But the question remains, how much longer must they wait? How many more generations will grow up without their sacred objects? How many more elders will die before justice arrives? The museums have their answers, policies, procedures, protocols. But these sacred objects have their own answer, whispered through decades of captivity. We remember where we came from, and we will return,